What's up, Paul, Mike? How you doing,
What's
guys?
going on, Nick? How are you?
Good, Nick.
I'm good.
We're
I'm
good. How are you, sir?
What's this thing around your neck?
You're looking very sharp.
So I've been interviewing people, and when I interview people, I try to look like an adult. So I wore a collar.
I say I almost didn't recognize you not in a t-shirt.
Yeah. Well, if I try to play golf at a country club or if I interview somebody, I wear a collar.
That's a good rule.
Yeah. And then they accept the job and then they realize this guy's always in a t-shirt. It's clearly the owner's son. Can't take him seriously. But I know how to put it on for one day.
There are a lot of manufacturing events out there, but Top Shops 2025 happening November 11th and 12th at the NASCAR Hall of Fame in Charlotte, North Carolina is the one I'm circling on my calendar. You know, as a motorhead, I'm thrilled for that. It brings together the most forward-thinking shop owners to benchmark, share ideas, and dive into what's really driving results. And this year, Nick, Mike, and I will all be there. We'll be on site having real conversations with leaders like you and bringing that energy back to Making Chips. Registration isn't open just yet, but if you want first access to all the details, head to topshopsevent.com and sign up for updates. This is going to be big, and I hope to see you in Charlotte.
So, Paul, where are you? You look like you're in a hotel room.
I am in a hotel room. I am in Orlando, Florida, and awesome. I'm here at it's called an executive forum. And it's a week-long forum where manufacturing leaders talk about their businesses and do case studies, and it's super interesting and fun. So,
is it a pro shop thing, or
it's not actually, but it is for another company actually in the woodworking kind of space.
Oh, okay.
And this model of what they're doing is something we're going to replicate at Pro Shop with our customers. So,
really?
I'm here this week to learn about how it all works.
Being a sponge.
Yeah, I'm curious, Paul. I know this isn't the point of the episode, but in that environment, totally different industry from metalworking. Yep. Are the topics the same topics?
Almost identical.
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah, lack of skilled trades, variability in materials, how to build consistent processes. Yeah, it's like a bunch of machinists that just have.
Yeah, what really changes? Metal and wood?
Yeah, they just have wood splinters instead of metal shaving splinters in their hands.
Right.
But it's all the same.
Making Sawdust is their show.
Making Dust.
Yeah, Making Dust.
That's a new podcast, maybe.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, Paul, what's give me an idea of the climate right there, the temperature. Is it crazy?
It is 91 degrees and 175% humidity.
Okay, so
I swam back to my hotel room to do this recording. That's right.
No, so this is what sucks about where I live. So Rockford was in the news a few years ago for a week. It was colder than Antarctica.
Oh gosh.
And then yesterday it was 97 degrees, so colder than Orlando, or hotter and more humid than Orlando. So we just get all the extremes. We're battle tested here.
Yeah, that's rough.
What's it like there in Tulsa, Mike?
We're mid 90s right now this whole week. So it's definitely warmer, and we get a fair amount of the humidity here.
Well, we're supposed to do the Machine Shop MBA and get serious and equip and inspire people and not just talk about the weather, but we do have a guest today. Paul, would you like to introduce our guest?
I sure would. And I'm super excited about this guest. So we have Kevin Bowling, and Kevin is with Major Tool. That is a pretty major machine shop. I actually got the chance to visit and tour with the NTMA a couple years ago and was absolutely blown away. And they have not too long ago received sort of Top Shops award for shop floor practices, which is perfect because that's what we're here to talk about today.
Awesome.
So
congratulations on being a Top Shops award winner, Kevin.
Thank you all very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah, welcome, Kevin. Tell us a
what
little bit
was the
about
category again? What category did you win it for?
Yeah, it was shop floor practices.
Shop floor practices. Okay, right in line with the episode.
Yeah. So
maybe give the listeners a little bit of your background and the shop background.
Yeah, sure. So my background has been I'm a mechanical engineer, and I've been involved in business leadership as well as for a long time now. Began my career in mold making, designing and building plastic injection mold tooling, Did that for about 15 years. And then for the last 26, I've been here at Major Tool and Machine in various types of engineering management. And now I've been the COO now for some time, running operations and basically everything that goes on at this site. So Major Tool is one of 8 companies under an manufacturing umbrella called PersinMac. So we were purchased in 2021 in August. And we've had incredible growth years, pretty much year over year since then. But I am, I'm the kind of guy that likes to make stuff. I actually, when I got into the leadership side, which has been the majority of my time here at Major Tool, I actually started making knives. I got a CNC machine in my garage. Started making things that I just, I needed an outlet, to even, I'm running this huge machine shop and make great big giant things. Our largest machine, you can drive a school bus up on the bed and literally machine it.
What's the brand of that machine?
That particular one's a Dory Sharman. It's a big German, just solid machine that will be here probably long generations beyond me, right? So, but yeah, just the sheer size, I just still needed an outlet. So I live and breathe what goes on in this business, every single thing. And our business, we make a lot of big stuff, but what we are really about is people, and that's what makes it work. We automate, we jump in with all different, sorts of productivity efforts and ways to do things better, but it all comes back down to the people. And so we really work hard at, being a place where people want to be. Yeah, that's kind of a rough idea of my background. I love manufacturing. I can run a CNC machine. I can strike an arc and weld and put together some things and pretty much everything we do here. So I kind of look at my role as a COO as just a kind of an upside down org chart, just flip it upside down. My role is to serve and make sure that everybody that is doing what they need to do every day has exactly what they need to do it.
I love this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It's like articulating a lot of our core values, servant leadership being one of them, continuous learning. And so.
And I love the fact that after a day of machines and making stuff, you put one in your garage so you can do even more of it at nighttime.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Making knives. Are you doing any like defense work in your company? Because like making knives is the lowest form of weapon, right? And then you're probably doing some more intense stuff.
Yeah, no, for me, making knives was just, the fun stuff. I love titanium, making titanium handles and working with some powdered metals, stainless blades and doing the heat treating. And, that's what I was doing. But yeah, I mean, here at Major Tool, we have a large percentage of our business is dedicated to defense work. A lot of Navy work, supporting the maritime industrial base in general. Lots of stuff for carriers, surface ships, submarines, nuclear power plants in those vessels that are nuclear powered. So the product itself requires, the level of shop floor discipline, process discipline that I know is part of what we're, going to be talking about a little bit here today. So it's defense is a big piece. We do a little bit of semiconductor large machines for chip making.
The other kind of chips.
We also still have some power generation, some natural gas type power gen equipment, mainly in hot gas path. That's one of our specialties. We've been around for a long time building and welding, high nickel alloys, Inconels, and different types of metals that are not necessarily easy to weld and machine. Are kind of our bread and butter.
Give the audience just a little bit more snapshot of the size of Major Tool, the square footage, number of employees, machines, and a little bit more of the machinery. When I walked through it, these massive VTLs. You talked about that machine you could put a school bus in, but some of the other equipment was just blowing my mind.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We're on a single campus here in Indianapolis, Indiana, about 670,000 square feet of manufacturing space.
Wow.
We have 452 employees today. I looked that up before we jumped on here today. And a large number of those folks are machinists, CNC machining. That's what we do. Machine tool sizes, in our business, we call it large format. it's usually items that are larger than 6 feet or so, all the way up to, is whatever can be shipped across the road. I think I've had as much as 26 feet in size. We have to tip that on an angle to get it out of the shop. But yeah, I mean, very large equipment, large turning and milling. A lot of our large VTLs have spindles, live spindles built in. I even actually have a head they call a YZ head, which is pretty fascinating, where you can actually machine, drill, and tap off center on a VTL. That literally, the axis is timed so well, so precisely that you can tap and thread mill holes off center. So your basically axis is turning while you're moving in your standard axes at the same time. So it's pretty fascinating equipment.
That's awesome.
No kidding.
So would you say a lot of shops have this? Not all of them, but they have like their pinnacle machine tool, the one that like they take everybody to. You got to see this. Yeah. Would that be it?
No, that's actually probably kind of one in the middle. Those are two VTLs that get up to around 10, 12 feet in diameter and can get a part on there close to 10 feet tall. But yeah, our giant machines are kind of the machines that get attention, right? Because they're less common in normal or standard shops. And they're the where we can turn up to 40 feet in diameter and do 5-axis milling, on 100 feet of X travel and 15 to 18 feet in Y and we got a couple of horizontals as well with quills, so they're big stable machines. But a lot of the big stuff for us is gantry style mills, and all of them have turning and milling. So, without being able to kind of show you photos here and a video, you could go to our website. There's a hype video out there that shows the equipment. Unfortunately, I can't show a lot of the parts we make.
Yeah.
But we can show the equipment, and you can kind of imagine what would be on those types of machines. So,
well, I shared a photo of me. I was in Austria earlier this year, and I visited a company called WFL, and they make some of the biggest lathes you'll ever see. And I was just blown away. I mean, it was just incredible, some of this, and they'll sell 200 machines a year, but to like only shops like yours or shops doing really crazy super niche-y stuff. So it's always really impressive, the big stuff.
Yeah, I'm having a hard time even visualizing the size of the machine like you were mentioning. That's insane.
I couldn't get the whole thing in Austria in the frame, so I had to like zoom back and do like a pano shot to get it. It was crazy.
And Mike, in some cases the machinist is in a kind of like a gondola, and you can move that independently with the machine, as it's moving. And also sometimes, we're down inside the idea of a part. We're maybe down in there 10 feet. It's a 20-foot diameter part. Guys are running, precision tooling, both turning and milling. And sometimes, you're dependent on a camera to be able to get the level of detail you need to be able to see it. But cameras and lights these days can really do a pretty good job of showing you what's going on, and then we learn to hear. I know we talk about that a lot in CNC machining. You can tell what's going on if you're machining.
One thing you said earlier that I thought was awesome, and before you start getting into some of the technical aspects of running a shop at peak performance, you talked about it's all about the people.
Yes, sure.
And you talk about learning to hear, and we need to hear our machines and when things are off, but you seem like a leader who hears your people. And I just recorded earlier today on the Lights Out podcast, one of our other shows. It's all about automation and technology. And we were talking a lot about like the 8 wastes in lean. There's all these forms of waste. And some people, depending on where you look, they would say 7. And the difference between 7 and 8 is this one called unused employee creativity, which to me is like the most important one.
Yeah.
Out of all of the forms of waste that you can get rid of, like if you're not engaging the minds and hearts of your people and getting the most out of that collective brain that we all are sharing as we run a machine shop, that's like the biggest loss, rather than like, okay, there's overproduction they're all important. You want to get rid of them all. But what do you, before we get into some of the kind of technical aspects, what do you attribute that culture to, and how do you create and foster that culture that runs a peak performance shop that's doing really difficult work?
Yeah, that's a good question because it's a lot of things, but I think the first thing is really knowing and understanding your values as a business. Some people will build a pyramid chart of their business, and their customers and shareholders will be on the top, and employees are a means to an end. I kind of see it differently than that. I think the employees are why we exist. You don't have a customer without an employee and a team member. And certainly you're not going to make any money for a shareholder or any stakeholder if you don't have an employee. So I think it starts there. And then if you want to have a culture where people are heard and where they're part of building processes, then it's important to design their feedback into simple NPI. So like if you got a new part you're going to introduce into the mix, and you're going to use this machine tool, and you got this idea, well, can you build processes that get employee engagement when you're bidding the job and determining your approach, so you cost it properly and price it properly? And then if you win the job, should you have standard work that brings people together and actually forces to the process to go through a series of gates that it engage employees and get their feedback? And that it's a twofold benefit, right? The employee feels connected to what's going on. And then you don't walk out there with a process and, a new product and say, here, have at it, and make sure you get this done in 100 hours like we estimated it. And they've never seen it before. So, how you don't feel engaged and included unless you can build standard work around the encouragement of engagement. And so that's kind of the linchpin in my mind of how we get people involved and how they stay involved. And then day to day, there's another piece of that, right? And that's the kind of the daily Kaizen, and having a team-based way for the teams to get together, huddle up. They can give their best ideas about safety. How can we improve what we're doing today and tomorrow? And the best solutions come from the people that do the work every single day. And they don't typically come from COOs and presidents. They come from the floor. And we oftentimes, or I don't know, maybe I shouldn't speak for everybody, but when we're not doing this well, we don't do as well as a business. The more we do this well in the engagement of our people, the better we perform. So, it's a great thing. And then the other thing is it's difficult to, I think you guys have talked about it in previous episodes and so forth of your show, but how difficult it is to hire and retain, attract the best and brightest in the industry. And there's a shortage of trades and experience out there looking for work anyway. And it's difficult in these businesses to keep people motivated to be loyal to a shop or a brand. But if they're engaged, they feel a sense of purpose, there's passion in their work. And I got to believe that we have a better opportunity to keep people here and have them retire from here. I've got a couple of people that we gave away Cadillacs to as a 50-year service award, because we got to 50 years and we didn't have a standard. We have 5-year increment, service awards. And so I think there's at least 2 more here in the next 5 years that are working on their Cadillac.
Man, my shop turns 50 next year, and I was trying to think of something to give everybody. It's not going to be a Cadillac.
The bar got put pretty high.
Yeah. I mean, I was
just
thinking
imagine, just imagine Rhett driving a Cadillac.
Yeah. Not 50 days, 50 years.
Right.
Mike's got like a 250,000 mile Cadillac for some guy.
It's like 100.
That's a good Cadillac.
$200.
Yeah. Who was it that sang that song back in the, 70s about the, I've got a 65, 66, 67, 68 Cadillac that all got put together. I can't remember what song that is.
Yeah.
We just end up with a bunch of those.
Yeah, I'm sorry for running on too long there.
Not at all.
You start talking about people, that's my passion. And that's how we get things done.
Yeah. Without the people, like any of the process stuff or any of the lean foundations, they really don't stick without like the people and the culture and leaders like yourself. So I don't think you ran on at all. That's more important than the technical knowledge.
100%, because it supports it, right? I mean, we can send whatever edict we want to the floor, but if you don't have the buy-in, it's not going to happen anyway. So building it from them up, I think, is perfect. And we talked about that the last couple episodes, like building your entire process backwards. I mean, you kind of talked about that inverted, org chart, but
Yeah.
Just what does everybody need to, as part of that process, to do their job correctly? And I think we used the example of starting with, you need to get paid, right? So what does the accounts payable department need to successfully send out an invoice? And then, they need a packing slip and certs, and, just build that process backwards. And I think, you just supported that perfectly.
I like how you connected those dots, Mike. So Kevin, if you didn't listen to the last episode, we talked about kind of like start the furthest downstream and define success for the step before you. So you have buy-in to like, hey, I'm great at my job when you deliver work to me this way.
Yeah.
And that, I like how you connected that to what Kevin was saying about, flipping it, and really like the COO is there to serve everyone else.
Sure.
And kind of the inverted org chart. Because it's like starting downstream. It's like, okay, well, you're the employees. What can we do to make your job and your life more rewarding? And there's another thing you said, Kevin, that reminds me of something my older brother says. He would be like kind of more like you, more in the operation side of the business. Of course, he does it all. But, he said something often, continuous improvement needs continuous improvement. And so you were like, the better we do at these employee engagement, daily stand-ups, getting the ideas from everybody, the better our company is. And it's like, yeah, you can't just have these things that you do. You actually need to make them better all the time. One thing we do is we rate our meetings every time we have our weekly meetings. Like, how was the meeting itself? Not like what we talked about in the meeting, if things going good or bad, but how was the meeting itself? And then we talk about like format changes or things we could do to make the meeting more impactful for everybody. Do you have examples of how you continuously improve your continuous improvement that you want to share, Kevin?
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's a lot of these processes I was talking about, we use a lot of software. So, we're making big stuff, but we're really software driven. I have full stack programmers on IT staff here. We're designing our applications. They're all working out of the same Oracle, centralized database. And one of the things that we found is that when someone has an idea, it oftentimes is hard to get that idea manifest and control it. So we've built software tools so that an employee can actually put their idea in, or a team leader can take a huddle, a group of people may have come up with an idea, and we built a software tool where we capture that idea, and then it has a workflow built into the software that engages everyone who's, is a stakeholder, or maybe someone has to approve to spend some money or whatever it is. And then we build a dashboard, a real simple Power BI dashboard where the employee can go look up their ideas and see the life. Where is it?
Oh, that's so good.
That's cool.
So they can see that, it's being paid attention to. Okay. So just building that tool supported the request for getting, the engagement and the ideas and the flow of improvement from our people. And then not only that, but we created what we called it an IT request, which was really just a way for our people to say, hey, this program that I'm using sucks. And if it would do this or that better, I could do this in 2 keystrokes instead of having to go look this up and that up. And over time, the engagement of our people has shaped the way our applications work and integrate together. And there are literally thousands of edits that came from our people that have made the software tools work like they work today. And then we still get dozens of those a month requests from the floor that says, hey, I wish this program would do this, or I wish I could use one program to do what it takes me 2 or 3, applications to go do. So, I mean, that kind of, building a structure that encourages the engagement, right, is continually improving the continual improvement process. That I think you put that well.
It's just like one of the requests we got. So we have this branded term we call CIA, Customer or Competitor Intelligence Agency. And it's really my outside field team, the regional sales directors, and they bring back, hey, we were 15% high against this competitor, but it wasn't apples to apples because of these features, that features. It's like how we know where we stand, And sometimes it's like, hey, the customers are really frustrated with how we do this or whatever. And in the last sales meeting we had, we said, hey, like the CIA needs to be a lot more volume. We need to get a lot more of these tickets. And one of the guys said, Yeah, like I'd probably do it a lot more, but I run it up through this system and then I never see what happens with it. And it's such good feedback, just like your example. If we created some sort of way for them to follow, because we actually do address it. We talk about it in every meeting, but we don't let them have insight into how that particular issue got solved.
Yeah.
We're just like, hey, bring us the issues and we'll solve them. Really good example from your story that I could apply to sales, not, operations.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the size and scale for us, I've got 450 people, and my entire leadership team was a little over 50, about 10 executives. And at that, there's not enough of us to own the continual improvement process. Our people have to own it. And the worst thing I think you can do as a management team is go out and beg for ideas from your people and then don't listen to them. That will be that's a recipe to kill your program. So yeah, I mean, building the tools, really do help us be more productive in how we manage the influx of ideas. And what's cool about it is you have an environment where you have too many to be able to process. That's what I want. I want to solve that problem and not looking for people to be engaged.
Do you do anything with I'm sure you do, but like if your KPIs, your performance measures, so that the ideas that get brought to the table are those that are going to prove an important metric, which will, of course, improve your business result. But I had a conversation with our VP of operations. He's like, yeah, we're getting some ideas. When we first started this initiative, they were like, well, there's cracks in the driveway we need to fill in and we got to clean the ceiling fans. And he's like, how about some ideas about your job? They were good ideas, but things that are going to improve the KPIs right in front of us on the screen here. How do you kind of connect the dots between everything you're doing with continuous improvement and what really matters and what's really going to move the needle for the business performance?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because the more, I think fundamentally every single person on every team needs to be able to have enough clarity and information at their fingertips that they can answer the question of whether they've won or not. So if you don't have, well-defined and clear KPIs and you don't have a good scoreboard, it's kind of like, playing the game in 48 minutes of basketball and you don't turn the scoreboard on until the last 2 minutes. Nobody knows what's going on. Nobody knows how many fouls or whether teams are in the bonus or not. Of course, I'm Indiana. I'm talking about basketball right now.
R.I.P.
We just
that.
lost.
Oh, gosh, the Halliburton Achilles injury was so heartbreaking, man.
Maybe being from Oklahoma, I'll just say I'm okay with everything.
Okay with the results there. Yeah.
No, OKC was a great team, and it was
terrible what happened to Halliburton, though.
It was awful.
You saw it happen. You saw it instantly. He knew, and it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Great series, though. Anytime you go Game 7.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the idea behind having the KPIs out there where people can see it. So we've built our dashboards and where our teams, some folks have to. I have this luxury, right? Because I've got the ERP and I've got years and years of investment in this process. But you don't have to. I don't have to have a bunch of people running charts out of Excel and hanging them up. And I'm not putting that down. Do that if that's the method you got. Do that. But we've built Power BI, dashboards and using Oracle Apex tools, and the folks know, if the job was estimated to run at 100 hours and they've got 105 in it, that they're 95% efficient. We use the efficiency as actual versus estimate. They know that if we needed to get X number of parts done in a given month, our size. We don't talk about number of pieces per day. we usually are, it's not unusual to have, 300 or 400 hour, single machining operations. But it's,
so cool.
That's
wild. What those are, everyone needs to know. Okay.
It's not abnormal for me either, but my parts aren't as big. It just usually means something went wrong.
Yeah. But I mean, just to know, am I meeting the estimate? Are we meeting or beating it? And if we're not, then that can be the incubator for the ideas. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I estimated it's at 100 hours. And by the way, in many cases, the people were involved at some level of building up that estimate. So there's a sense of ownership there. It's not like, well, heck, the estimating team just screwed me. That's their problem. They need to go figure out, I want them to say, okay, we all thought it was going to be 100 hours, not just 1 or 2 people, and it's taken 105. Well, what can we do? On the next part, can we do this differently and find a way to shave off 5 hours and get back to 100%? And then when you're at 100%, how do you shave off 5 more to get to 105% efficient?
Mm-hmm.
And build
readjust the target, set a new goal,
exactly. And I don't have to adjust the target. Frankly, they do. Mm-hmm. They know the game. They know that to win and continue to get that business from our customers and show the best value to win new work, that we have to do it better than anybody else can, and that requires everybody to bring their intellect to that process, and they do. And that's the cool part about having those KPIs and the connection between what's going on. But I think the key is the clarity. They need to know, can they answer, did I win today or not? And if the information isn't there for them to know that, then it's probably foolish of me to expect them to come back with an idea to improve something they didn't even know was in need of improvement.
So Kevin, it seems like you're queuing up perfectly. Like this is the crux of why you guys won for best shop floor practices. It's like, this is foundational, right? Having people know the expectations, have the visibility of whether they did well or not, and having the culture to just continually refine and chip away and get better and better at it. Would you say that's it, or is there more to it? Or
no, I mean, that's it. Honestly, that's extremely well said. The difficulty in doing any of these types of things is consistency. And I think consistency comes when it's really a core value, right? And I think it's hard to fake that, to take a recipe, try to put it out there because it seems like it's the right thing to do, right? And I'm not suggesting anybody does. I'm just saying that I think the difficulty in doing these sorts of things is that there's 1,000 reasons, why we're going to get shook up from time to time because something doesn't go the way we planned it to. And those times are even more, give you even more reason to be consistent and continue to do what you know is right with your people.
It seems like the difference between like daily stand-ups and continuous improvement as a part of the day-to-day, and then like random Kaizen events because like someone read a book on continuous improvement, thought we should do this. Or like setting a New Year's resolution where you're like, man, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight, or having part of who you are is like, I keep working out. I'm fit. This is part of my identity. So, or Paul's identity in the case of making chips.
And I want to come back to something you just said, Kevin, about core values. Is consistency one of Major Tool's core values?
So it's consistency for us is not a written core value. It's more of an outcome from doing all the other things. Our core values are trust, gratitude, action, growth, and excellence. And then what we do is we take those 5 kind of words and we say that we're bound by trust and committed to build meaningful relationships. And our gratitude, we express our gratitude and we appreciate the opportunity to serve the needs of our people, customers, and communities. Action is we lead with action. We take ownership to achieve our desired results. And then growth is an important one because we're a learning organization and we adapt through constant innovation and focused agility. And our last one, which is not the least one, of course, is excellence. And because we're driven by excellence, we want continual improvement to be our passion, and we possess the discipline and resilience to pursue that passion.
I love so much that we're here talking about best shop floor practices, and we have moved right into core values. So if you're out there listening and you don't have core values because you think it's touchy-feely and it doesn't actually help you make chips more often, listen to Kevin about why that core value leads to the activities that put you at top, the very best performing shop in the country for shop floor practices.
Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's all interconnected, right? And
absolutely.
And I think what I love about where we've gone in the conversation so far is, Kevin, you've said so many things that relate back to the first however many episodes we've done in the MBA series. I mean, 9, 10, whatever it is. From, developing a tech stack that supports your systems and processes and people and of course the best practices and all that. It's the whole thing. I mean, you can't really do one of these, right? It all works together. And Paul, like we were talking about you being at a woodworking, manufacturing conference, and it's the same discussions, right? All of this drives to the same direction.
Yeah, it sure does. I think you can apply a lot of these values even outside of making chips, right? I mean, it's essential to us. And, you might be cutting beautiful wood and making awesome things. You might be figuring out how to make some sort of, important medicine. But all these things, I think essentially you can apply the concept of people first and write down your core values. And, if there's a shop or anybody listening that hasn't, I would just encourage you can start small, write down a couple of things that are really important to you and talk about them. And then won't take long usually when you do that, have an all hands meeting and get your people together and say, what do you guys think about this?
I think when you said, outside of making chips, where my mind went was like, when you talk about some of your operations and your lean foundation, your continuous improvement foundation, you were talking a lot about like software and how information flows too. It wasn't just how material flows through the shop from raw material to finished product. It was everything. We have an episode coming up in a few about running a lean enterprise. And just like you can't disconnect all the things we were just talking about, they're all integrated. It's the same with information flowing through your business, communication flowing through your business, material flowing through your business. It's all connected. And I like that you take that holistic approach.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I mean, we can talk a lot about some of the nuts and bolts of how you control your shop floor practices. And there's probably, several correct and good ways to do that, depending on the size of the enterprise and, what's actually going on the shop floor. But,
you were talking about the size of your parts too. And I do want to get into that a little bit, Kevin, because like your stuff is huge, which means the stakes are super high. Like if you scrap up one of your biggest parts, what could the damage be? Just let's play that.
Yeah.
out.
Well, I mean, it's not unusual to have multi-million-dollar single line items, right? So the thing is when you have a large high value, if you have a large high value, part on a machine tool that's already got 5,000 man hours of weld time on it, and you're 1,500 hours into the machine time already on a pretty high dollar hourly asset. You're working with an extremely high value piece of material at that point. So that the work in process that's sitting there, the stakes just continue to get higher and higher until until that last cut. I don't know about percentages, and all that, but rework for us is pretty low. I mean, my goal is to be less than 1.6%, and as a percentage of total ship sales in a year. It's not uncommon for us to be down that 1.5%, and so we just keep lowering the goal. I don't throw a lot of things away. There are a lot of instances where things can be, reworked or scoped. Whereas, when we're making some of the smaller things, maybe that go into a larger assembly, if you need 100 of these and you lose a couple, you got a scrap rate, and maybe it falls still within that 1.6%, right? So it's pretty important to me though, that we get it right. So again, that comes from planning and doing really good risk management. When you have a high dollar part on a machine, you better have thought about everything that could go wrong and at least have some level of action in place to mitigate that risk. Sometimes we just have, engineering and our programming team, because we don't program at our machine tools. We have a group of programmers, CNC programmers, offset. All of my tools are preset. They come to the machine in packages, and, we mitigate all sorts of risks, all sorts of different ways with technology. But sometimes the best mitigator is just to have the whole team stand out there before the start of the shift. You don't cycle start until you know what you're getting ready to do. And, you understand what the next feature is and, what the proper work offset is. And you go down through a list of lessons learned that's made its way into a checklist and, that guides a pre-job briefing. Those kinds of techniques, can be employed in various scales across, just even if it's a small part or a big part. stakes get higher with big parts. That's kind of how it usually goes. But it still has to be, all the processes have to be controlled. We've built a pretty strong PFMEA style risk management process in our planning, and I'm not satisfied with it. It needs to get better and better and better. And
what's that acronym? PFMEA.
PFMEA. It's process failure mode and effects analysis. It's one of the tools that's typically used to manage risk.
Mm-hmm.
So we build all that, and you basically you define a risk and a risk register. What could happen if power goes out? I got a big part. I got a tornado drill, or a brownout happens in Indiana, and all of a sudden I don't have any power. Well, I can't risk destroying a multi-million-dollar part or a multi-million-dollar machine tool, or having to fix a multi-million-dollar machine tool and being down for 2 months while I'm rebuilding a gearbox or a spindle. So, we have to mitigate that risk. Well, how do we do that? And then a group of people get together and decide how we're going to go do that. And we write down what we're going to go do. And then you score that risk, and there are certain risks you accept. And then there are some that you don't get a risk number down low enough, and you got to keep after it until you get that number lower. So that's just one of the tools, right? There are lots of different ways of making sure you're doing the right things. But big parts. One of the challenges with lean is I can't build a U-cell, and I got a machine tool it's planted in the ground, literally integrated into the building, and
can't just move it around.
I got all these. I get this. If you drew a spaghetti diagram of my system, you'd say that's the crappiest lean project I've ever seen in my life. And you're wasting, you're handling these parts and doing all this stuff. But there's kind of no choice. That's one of the fixed constraints. So how do you apply, the waste reduction in other ways? And there are ways to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And we work hard and get our people engaged in figuring out those ways as well, like we've been talking. So
I love that you put some of, the talk about scrap and all that in percentages, right? Because I can imagine a lot of our listeners, especially with this focused at starting or just starting to build your first shop, can listen to your story and go, well, that's not me. I'm not making multi-million-dollar parts. I'm hoping to do $500,000 in my first year. Right? But everything you're talking about is just scalable, right? I mean, you're 1.6% rework. I mean, I have a 1.8% internal goal, right? Our goal is the same. Our number is totally different.
Yeah.
So all those things are scalable from a single person, in their garage, like you have as a hobby, to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, and I hope the listeners hear that. And I would also have to interject, like, I'm not sure you haven't listened to all our shows because you keep talking about checklists and planning. And I mean, these are all the things we've been talking about leading up to this show. And I love that it's like you're putting it into practical
he's like saying stuff we've said, like you got to know if you win or not.
Right.
And you got to have a scoreboard and like all the things I feel like we've been saying. So it's awesome.
I think he took all the transcripts, put them in ChatGPT, and had it summarize bullet points. And
I'm not even sure this is the real Kevin. This could be an AI Kevin.
It's a digital twin.
You guys are giving me way too much credit, and I'm not smart enough to do ChatGPT yet. So,
I keep, for those watching on camera or on YouTube, I just keep smiling as you talk. So much of what you describe is the way we ran our shop. Right. So I used to own a machine shop years ago, and we got up to about 75 people, not 450. But from, the concept of checklist to all the pre-kitting of jobs and tools and pre-job, meetings and kickoffs, we call them war rooms, and the continuous improvement, like employee suggestion system, we did all those things. Right. And some of those things did turn into software, kind of like you're describing as well. ProShop was built out of ProCNC, and we would have Kaizen newspaper boards all around the shop in different departments. And Nick, to your point, we would also train our team on back then we just did the 7 wastes, but we'd had, all those wastes of the Toyota production system, and we just drill into their heads, like, these are the wastes. If you see them, if you see that you're doing them, write them down on this Kaizen newspaper. And then the team will collectively tackle it. And and some of those things turned into, physical changes on the shop floor. But a lot of those things turned into software tickets, right, that we built into ProShop. And Kevin, you do the exact same thing. You have your developer team that's building out a much bigger sort of Oracle-based thing that is appropriately sized for you, not appropriately sized for a 20-person shop probably. But
Sure.
the concept is still the same, and it's this sort of continuous improvement system building robust processes kind of at its core. So I'm sure that's cool. That's got to be a major contributor to why you're at that top shop level.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. We're never satisfied with where we are too, right? So I think that's the part that keeps us rolling with continual improvement is no matter how well you have done and how much you've achieved, the exciting part for me is, and being in this business as long as I have, is that I still look around and I see all sorts of potential and opportunity to do more. So I love the accolade of achieving top shop, but for me, that's a milestone and it's great. And I'm very, very humbled by it, but I also like, what's next and that continuous, that journey that you're on, to continually do better.
So just as like a kind of a concluding takeaway, remind me, how long have you been with Major Tool?
Yeah, 26 years last May.
So if you remember back to 26 years ago, did you have the scoreboard? Did you know the current score? Did you have the current state all sorted out, or was that part of the journey?
No, we did not, and it was part of a journey.
Yeah, same for us.
Yeah, we had some tools, and we had metrics, and we built charts, and but the majority of the time they were built to kind of see what had already happened in the past, not leading indicators, and certainly not the kind of scoreboard you would expect to see during the game before the buzzer goes off.
Yeah.
So, and that's the key, I think, to any good KPIs is knowing every day whether you're winning or not at the end of every month. So
I think for us, just one thing I would say is when we would start whatever the lean initiative was, or just whatever the initiative was, we would often skip the really clear definition of the current state. So you'd start the process, then you'd start like saying, oh, well, we ought to do this, we ought to do that. Well, let's do this, or it could be this, instead of just like making sure, right now at 5 minutes into the first quarter, this is the score.
Yeah.
And so like what you were describing was, you'd look back retroactively and see, okay, maybe it was how we performed on this job or how we performed last month or whatever. And then everyone's pretty good at like, well, what if we did this? This would be great. But a lot of folks skip the step of like really defining the current state. Once you've got like these KPIs that you want to impact, make sure you take the time to figure out exactly what the score is right now. Yes. It's something that a lot of people skip. We've skipped it a lot. My brother would be like, Nick, stop. What is it right now?
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, I think it could be this. Yeah, it doesn't matter. What is it right now? Until you give me what it is right now, like we're not going to focus on like what to set the target at for the future because you don't even know what it is right now. So anyway, that's, I think, a great takeaway for anyone who's doing anything to optimize any process, but especially processes on the shop floor.
Yeah, I agree with that. Another quick thing from my aspect is that every time we institute and go after an improvement of any kind, I think it's important from a leadership standpoint to ask the question, have those changes, we go through a cycle of trying them, proving them out. Once you've decided that you want that to be a constant thing that you're going to do as a business, then it needs to be written down somewhere, right? And so you really have to have the discipline and the diligence in your continual improvement effort to create standard work around the improvement. How did it change the current process? And then should the current process be updated? And hopefully it's written down somewhere so that you can manage it, update it, and change it. And then the next person that comes along, they can train to that new procedure that has that new improvement in it, which is just going to be standard work for anyone new coming along. Mm-hmm. That's pretty important to sustain, the kinds of gains that you get through your continual improvement effort. And
we talk all the time about how like we forget the fourth and fifth S in 5S.
Yeah.
Standardize and then sustain.
Yeah.
It's like my kids, they make them clean up their room and then they make a mess 10 minutes later and it drives me freaking crazy.
Yeah.
But we do the same thing in our shops far too often.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Paul from MakingChips. If you've been burned by recruiters who don't understand manufacturing, you are not alone. That's exactly why we created Hire MFG Leaders. We're not just recruiters, we're current and former shop owners, and we know what it takes to lead in this industry. Whether you're hiring your next operations leader, sales manager, or production supervisor, we'll help you find someone who actually fits. Learn more at makingchips.com/hire.
So Paul, take us to the finish line here. What are your kind of final thoughts and takeaways?
I mean, just the way that Kevin started out with the inverted org chart, and that leaders are there to serve the people, make sure they have everything they need to do their jobs. They're engaging with them at the earliest stages of NPI, new product introduction, right? Where you're quoting a new job, you're getting the team together. How are we going to tackle this together? You know, the people on the shop floor have the best ideas. They know the most about the process. They know the most about how to improve it. You know, standard work is just lean speak for like, you know, good written work instructions, good process definition, right? We talk about that all the time, rather than just throwing it over the wall and good luck, you know, to the operations team from sales, right? Like we talked about, you know, on the last episode, it's you know, a detailed plan that has accurate time targets. It has, you know, step-by-step operations of what we need to do. What are the risks? Obviously, when you're making multi-million-dollar parts, that risk analysis has to be pretty thorough and detailed, and you know, compared to when you're making $10 or $100 parts. But nonetheless, the principles are still the same, and all the way to, you know, having an actual process for getting employee improvement ideas and incorporating those into the way the company works. Just yeah, absolute masterclass. And it's clear that all those activities stacked on top of each other. One of the things I'm learning this week is this concept of a group of integrated activities, right? Where you're coming from multiple angles to tackle a problem. And you can't just have one big solution and hope that it is a silver bullet. It takes, you know, 20 different 5% solutions and 5% activities to all make a really massive impact on something. And Kevin, I think you just described so many ways that the company has really well integrated activities that result in you guys being, you know, one of the best in the country at shop floor practices. And yeah, just
and Kevin, as we
fantastic all
close,
around.
I think you said something that really impacted Mike too, because you said you're never content with where you're at, and he's off solving some challenge in his shop. So he's never content with where he's at either, because we don't see him on the screen anymore. But, hey, thank you so much, Kevin. We end every episode the same way. It's something you've probably said in your shop, but we always say, if you're not making chips,
you're not making money.
Bam.